You're in trouble, Donald. In the courts, in the streets, in your own party. But there's one big problem you never saw coming. Turn around. He's right behind you. It's JD. His billionaire friends mock you. Why do you think they forced JD Vance on you? Age is getting to you, Donald, and you're just too slow to see the plan. If you win, JD will come for you.
Donald Trump is owned by billionaires. He plays Americans for fools while promising them everything. It started in 2016 with Peter Thiel.
Well, look, I'm not going to waste all the time I'm in. I'm going to talk about his running mate.
The fact that Donald Trump is already making use of his position as the incoming president of the United States to resolve his legal issues and enrich himself in the most shady ways is something that we would anticipate Donald Trump to do. His Melania problem is becoming much more apparent than it ever has been in the days following the 2024 election, and it is really in the most humiliating way for Donald Trump, and we are going to get into all of that. There is one problem that is made much worse by him being elected president of the United States, and that is his Melania problem. But before we do that, I would like to make a quick request that you give this video a like, and if you are a fan of our channel and would like to be a part of this movement that is resisting Trump over the next 4 years, please hit that subscribe button. It will go a long way, and it really means the world to me. This is before we discuss what happened with Melania Trump on election night, and the days that followed, which are so embarrassing for Donald Trump. I believe that it is necessary to bring up Elon Musk, who is another important player who is close to Donald Trump. At this point, I would like to discuss an article that was just recently published about Musk and Trump. I believe that this article makes a great deal of sense when considered in the context of Donald's relationship with Melania. According to JD Vance, the United States might withdraw its support for NATO if Europe makes an effort to regulate Elon Musk's platforms. The nominees for vice president of the Republican Party have stated that Germany and other countries, and not Russia, would be responsible for funding the reconstruction of Ukraine. J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for vice president in Ohio, has proposed that the United States' support for NATO should be contingent on the European Union's refusal to regulate Elon Musk and his former social media platform. In an interview with YouTuber Sean Ryan, a senator stated that a high-ranking official from the European Union had threatened to arrest the billionaire if he allowed former President Donald Trump to return to X. Vance, the leader, was cited as the source of this information. This threatening letter that I sent to Elon basically said that we are going to arrest you if you platform Donald Trump, who, by the way, is likely to be the next president of the United States of America. I forgot exactly which official it was with the European Union. In the interview that was published a week ago, Vance stated that Trump's running mate has suggested that the United States' support for NATO should be used as a cudgel to get the Europeans to comply with the United States' demands. As a result, the question that the American people ought to be asking is whether or not NATO wants us to continue providing support to them, and whether or not NATO wants us to continue to be a good participant in the military alliance. Do you not respect the values of the United States of America and the right to free speech? The idea that we would support a military alliance if that military alliance is not going to be pro-free speech, according to Vance, is completely absurd. Both are possible, in my opinion. However, it is clear that the power of the United States is accompanied by a number of conditions. Free speech is one of these things, particularly in the countries that we have allies in Europe. I wanted to begin with that article not only because it serves as a terrifying reminder of the abuses of power that will occur within the Trump administration over the course of the next 4 years, particularly with regard to Elon Musk, but also because it reveals who has the most significant relationship to Donald Trump. It is impossible that Melania, his wife, is involved. Elon Musk is the person in question, and the idea was only strengthened by a photograph taken on election night. We are going to get into this discussion. However, before we proceed, it would be helpful if we could read an article that made a prediction about what Melania Trump would be doing in the event that Donald Trump ever returned to the White House. The White House will have a long-distance relationship with Melania Trump if Trump is successful in winning the election again. Experts on the First Lady predict that, as evidenced by, among other things, the fact that she delayed her initial move to Washington, the infamous "who gives a F about Christmas" tape, the reports that she was miserable and very, very unhappy with her life, and the massive grin on her face when she disembarked at Palm Beach on January 20th, 2021, Melania Trump has made it abundantly clear that she did not enjoy her time when she was being the First Lady. Speaking to Axios, several First Lady experts predicted this week that Melania will not make the White House her home base in the event that Trump is elected to a second term. They believe that the more likely scenario would be for her to continue jetting between Palm Beach, where she has spent the past 4 years, and New York, where Barron is attending New York University. As Axios notes, the former First Lady has been effectively a wall on the campaign trail, and she specifically did not attend. So, it is probably not likely at this point that she is eager to spend more time with the guy, and all of this brings us to election night, when Donald Trump's granddaughter, Kai Trump, posted a photo that went viral for how humiliating it was for Donald Trump. The photo was a collection of all of his family members who were spending election night with him, with the exception of one. So let's take a look at it. As you can see in this picture of the Trump family, it was a photograph of the Trump family. Melania Trump is conspicuously absent. But who is there? Elon Musk. I've noticed that many people are commenting now that Elon Musk seems to be Donald Trump's First Lady. They are kind of right. Elon helped buy this election for Donald Trump. Despite the fact that Elon Musk was evading justice, as billionaires like himself and Donald Trump always do, his interference in the process of purchasing votes in Pennsylvania was obviously illegal. On the other hand, this individual is currently the most central figure in the Trump administration. Elon is going to be in charge of reducing the budget of the government, according to Donald Trump, and he was already on a call with President Zelensky when he made this announcement. And this is something that Tim Walz attempted to warn us about in this video right here. This is something that is absolutely terrifying.
Well, look, I'm not going to waste all the time I'm in. I'm going to talk about his running mate. His running mate, Elon Musk. Seriously. Where is Senator Vance after he got asked the simplest question in the world at the debate, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? And after 2 weeks, he finally said, no, he didn't. That's where he's been spending his time. But that's it. So, look, Elon's on that stage, jumping around, skipping like a dipshit on these things. You know it. Think about it. Think about that. That guy is literally the richest man in the world, spending millions of dollars to help Donald Trump buy an election.
Despite the fact that J.D. Vance is also catering to Elon Musk and doing everything in his power to support him, it is abundantly clear that Musk will be the individual who is closest to Trump within this administration. Not only by cutting the budget of the government and attacking the programs that have proven to be the most effective in assisting regular Americans, but also by doing whatever he wants, spreading and administering disinformation on behalf of Donald Trump and pushing the agenda that the Trump administration wants to see implemented online to our own deficit. That is going to be the focus of the situation, and that is what billionaires are going to do for and with Donald Trump. The reason for this is that they have purchased and take ownership of him, as we saw in this advertisement right here. Billionaires own Donald Trump.
Trump is owned by billionaires. He plays Americans for fools while promising them everything. It started in 2016 with Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley mastermind, and continues today with Peter's pet, J.D. Vance.
I love you guys.
Steve Schwartzman, the CEO of Blackstone. Since Schwartzman only took home nearly $1 billion last year, he really needs his tax cut. Bitcoin boys like Mark Andreessen, who want Trump to pump up what economists call the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. Kooks like Richard Uihlein, who, like GOP supporter Betsy DeVos, want to eliminate the Department of Education. Putin simps who side with Russia, like bad poker player and part-time podcaster David Sachs. These billionaires and players think they've bought the presidency. It's up to every American to make sure they don't get what they paid for.
Donald Trump never ran for president for any other reason than to keep himself out of jail, which he appears to be doing for at least the next 4 years. In addition, it appears that he will be writing another significant tax cut for himself in his retrenchment. We should be frightened by the fact that he has always been bought and paid for, and he is more so now than he has ever been. This should be especially frightful when we consider the extent to which we have witnessed Donald Trump's cognitive decline, as well as the role that these billionaires will play in really pushing all of the policy that they want. Well, Donald Trump is just typing away with those tiny fingers on Truth Social, playing golf and playing catch-up. That ought to terrify us. Take a look at this advertisement from the Lincoln Project that explains everything in detail, especially considering the possibility that J.D. Vance could potentially take over for Donald Trump at some point in his administration or play the role of shadow president. I am not sure if this is a worse scenario or not. You are in a difficult situation. Your own party, Donald, in the courts, in the streets, and in the streets. However, there is a significant issue.
In the streets, in your own party. But there's one big problem you never saw coming. Turn around. He's right behind you. It's JD. His billionaire friends mock you. Why do you think they forced JD Vance on you? Age is getting to you, Donald, and you're just too slow to see the plan. If you win, JD will come for you. You won't see him until it's too late. He won't wait until you make a mistake. JD's plot to invoke the 25th Amendment is already underway. Your cabinet betrayed you before. Why would it be different now? And with Democrats in the majority, no one will stop him. Republicans want someone younger, smarter, someone stable. A leader who will execute Project 2025 without your problems. Rupert's Wall Street Journal said Vance's version of Trump is better than the real thing. JD switched from never Trump hater to your running mate in record time. You thought that was real? You think he won't stab you in the back to seize 10 years of power in the White House? So yes, Donald, they really are out to get you, and the one who will betray your presidency is right by your side.
Now, we certainly do not like to get too conspiratorial on this show, but it is a possibility that, taking into consideration the cognitive state of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance will play a much bigger role in the administration than the majority of vice presidents would. This should be a cause for concern for us because we are aware of what he intends to do with our government. Due to the fact that they all strip us of our rights and civil liberties, he wants to rip it apart and use it to benefit only the top 1% of the population. This is what we are up against in this Trump administration, and it's why we have to be more tuned in than ever and push back like we never have before. And that is what we're going to be doing and talking about on this show. And every single day, I'm going to be trying to find as many resources as possible to make that job easier for us all. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. It is imperative that you remain attentive and continue to follow this channel until the next time we meet. I'll be seeing you very soon.
I want to turn to John Heilman and ask him about this because former President Trump wants President Biden to return to the race and become the Democratic nominee. In a Truth Social post yesterday, Trump wrote, in part, quote, Kamala should be investigated and forced off the campaign, and Joe Biden allowed to take back his rightful place. He got 14 million primary votes. She got none. It all stems from the vice president's recent interview with 60 Minutes and Trump's false claims the program edited the sit-down to Harris's benefit. Those comments come after Trump backed out of a scheduled interview with the outlet due to 60 Minutes saying that they would indeed fact-check him. and that CBS News would not issue an apology to him for his 2020 interview. And this is the thing. When you're choosing news sources, there are some that will check facts and make sure the facts are good and tell you if they've made a mistake in real time so that you understand the full context. And there are some that won't. John Howman, what do you make of Trump's comments about Biden and also this narrative that they're weaving about Kamala Harris not being chosen?
Well, Mika, I think any of us who have had the experience of visiting a elderly, failing relative or parent in like in an assisted living facility, you occasionally will find them and their fellow assisted living facility residents lost in reverie. They kind of think back to the good old days. They sometimes they kind of lose track of where they are in time. They may be 80 years old, but for periods of time they imagine they're still 40, and they kind of get lost in that dream space. Donnie, this happens with Donnie on a regular basis, and I think that's what we really see with Donald Trump is we see, he's still not gotten over the fact that the good old days for him, the best of times, those moments were when he still had Joe Biden, when he was still on the fast track to winning this election easily. And the closer we get to Election Day and the closer we get to whatever reality is going to befall him, the more we see Trump's lapse into those kind of nostalgic reveries. This is not the race that he spent 4 years wanting to run, and he can't let go of it.
So, yeah. Rev,
all right.
Let me real quick make it just also on this theme, Donnie. Let's get you in on this. The playbook just now talks about how Trump's been canceling interviews, and they've got reporting that he was in a sit-down conversation with a podcast called The Shade, and the people at the podcast say that the reason why Trump's campaign said he'd have to cancel it was indeed exhaustion. Which is the Trump campaign now disputes, but they have multiple sources saying that's why they were told they can't do it.
I think people should really focus on his kind of state of strength, state of weakness, state of well-being, state of non-well-being. Something's off. Something is off. He's really, he's addicted to crowds. He's addicted to media, and he's pulling back. So they're seeing something internally, and they're feeling something, and I think the spotlight should be on that.
I think it's been clear for those of us that have known and dealt with Donald Trump pro and con for years, that he is really, in many ways, not the Donald Trump that we fought or that we dealt with. No energy there, no sound bites that make sense. He's lost it. And I think that it's almost like pushing an old boxer back in the ring that he can't fight, but just tell him to hold on to the 10th round. And they're trying to make him hold on, and he just doesn't have it. He's sitting in the stool saying, I don't want to go back.
Let's bring in New York Times chief White House correspondent and NBC News political analyst Peter Baker and former Biden 2020 senior advisor Alencia Johnson. Peter, both candidates there in Michigan today, home to some 200,000 Muslim voters. We know Israel's been a major issue where progressives and Arab Americans want to see VP Harris charting a different course from President Biden. So with Hamas's leader dead now, does she have a chance to do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question whether she can pivot a little bit. She probably won't do anything that seems to be a direct contradiction to President Biden's policies. She's made very clear she doesn't want to do that, not just on Gaza, but on any, significant policy issue at the moment. She wants to be seen as loyal to her president, even as she's trying to distinguish herself. But I think it does raise the question of whether she can at least make an emphasis about the need to end the war, whether she can take what President Biden just said, as you showed him on the tarmac in Berlin, and expand it to that audience to say, look, it's our administration that wants to free the hostages and end the war in Gaza, and explain to those voters who may be skeptical of her that she would be better on the issue that they care about than Donald Trump. But that's been a hard sell up until now, and she's walking a very, very tight line here between loyalty to the president and trying to appeal to these disaffected Democrats.
Alencia, even as Trump says he'll reinstate the Muslim travel ban, he says he won't allow refugees from Gaza into the country, Republicans still are seeing an opening with Arab American voters, especially in Michigan, similar to how some Hispanic voters are breaking for Trump despite his harsh immigration proposals. How does VP Harris counter this with just a couple weeks left?
Listen, I think she continues to do what this campaign and she has been doing, which is having open conversations with the community leaders and listening to them and being in Michigan and being present. I also think too, yes, Donald Trump has opened an office in a heavily populated area in Michigan, but my conversations with a lot of uncommitted voters, Arab American voters, Muslim voters, they don't necessarily see Donald Trump as the answer. And so to me, it seems as though it's a waste of time and energy for Republicans because Donald Trump has said that he could decimate Gaza, right? He has said extremely harsh things and criticism. So it is interesting that they are trying to engage a community that, quite frankly, Donald Trump has shown for his position on in the Harris campaign. In contrast, as I mentioned, will continue to talk to these voters and talk to these communities about what they need and how to be in partnership.
Peter, let's talk about some new reporting in your paper when it comes to the Trump campaign. Various Trump allies and advisors think the former president's increasingly rambling appearances at the end of this campaign are becoming a liability. On one hand, this is Trump being Trump, right? Is it a liability?
Well, look, it is Trump being Trump to some extent. People obviously go to his rallies and expect him to be, entertaining in a way, and they see the sort of rambling and sometimes incoherent performances as part of the shtick. But I think that he has, in fact, demonstrated change in the last few years. We spent a lot of time going back and looking at rallies over the last 10 years and noticed that his speeches and his rallies have grown longer, more incoherent at times. He uses more all or nothing language. He uses more profanity. These are all signs in theory of an aging candidate. And the politics of age have been flipped, right? He had President Biden on the other side of the contest for a while, and he could focus on Biden's issues in terms of capacity and frailty. But now it's Trump who's the oldest candidate in the race and would be the oldest president in history if he wins and finishes out a second term. And so I think there are concerns about whether or not he is up for the job. And you see that reflected among some Republicans who are supporting him, worried that he's not showing the same capacity that he once did as he heads into this final stretch.
It's certainly something his opponent wants to highlight, Valencia, as we've seen the vice president repeatedly calling Trump unhinged, unstable, and she just dropped a new ad focusing on that. Watch.
If he wins, he'll ignore all checks that rein in a president's power. It's all in Trump's Project 2025 agenda. A second Trump term, more unhinged, unstable, and unchecked.
We are down.
And we've seen opponents who might have had evidence or facts on their side get outmaneuvered by Donald Trump. We've spent years at this table looking at investigations, the House subpoena process, and at times it yielded good information, and other times he seemed to outmaneuver it. Harris is closing right now. I mean, we're in 20 days, and she's basically saying he's low energy, exhausted, a coward, can't face her, can't face journalists. It strikes me as clearer messaging than sometimes the deal around other more nuanced, important but nuanced concerns. I want to play him saying, if you duck a debate, you're a coward, and then get your view of what she's doing to him right now. Let's take a look.
And, some of them don't have the courage to do it. I don't want to say who, but there are a couple
we know who they are.
I mean, there are a couple of them that called me and told me, Donald, I'm just too nervous to do it. And I'm saying to myself, here's a guy that's supposed to negotiate, or a person that's supposed to negotiate against China. These guys come out of the womb, they never cry. They're not even crying, and we have guys that are afraid to go into a debate.
What do you think about her saying, not only to him and baiting him, that's one level, but saying to voters, whatever you've heard about Donald Trump in the last many years, we're in the home stretch, and this exhausted guy can't show up to do the job of campaigning?
Well, I think there are very few ways to siphon off votes from either side right now. And I think one of them is he's exhausted. I mean, remember during the Hillary campaign where she, with the World Trade Center, where she kind of collapsed, and he used that. And I think
animal instinct.
Yeah, I mean, he's a feral guy. Like, he's a very animalistic human being. And so I think that I think she is going after the very few things that I think can affect this. So what are they? So, number one, there's that he is clearly moving toward dementia. I mean, forget
You're not a doctor, but that's
exactly.
But you know
forget
him.
the diagnosis. What are the symptoms? He can't put sentences together. He loses track of what he's saying. He contradicts himself. And that is combined with the second thing that I think is powerful, which is we've always known that he is a man without conscience. He's shameless, meaning he will say anything to anyone. So what you just saw him say was absolutely, clearly a lie. His fear is really high now. And if you combine the evidence of dementia with a psychopathic personality and his age and exhaustion as one of the consequences, this is one toxic brew that I think some voters will be influenced by.
Prison all of the Bidens, former FBI directors James Comey and Andrew McCabe, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, Nancy Pelosi, Special Counsel Jack Smith, all the members of the January 6th Special Committee, Mark Milley, Anthony Fauci, Georgia Prosecutor Fani Willis, Adam Schiff, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and election workers and poll officials. Just lock them all up. His political career has been defined by his ire for anyone who stands against him. Earlier this year, he openly toyed with the idea of taking revenge.
You know, the word revenge is a very strong word, but maybe we have revenge through success. But that's what I'd like to see. I want to see the country survive, because this country is not going to survive like this. Well, revenge does take time, I will say that.
It does.
And sometimes revenge can be justified.
And then, of course, there was this from last March.
In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today, I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
That was a dramatic turning point in our political life when he said, I am your retribution. Sounds a lot like what Mussolini used to say, I am your avenger. And if we thought and hoped maybe that his language couldn't get more extreme than that, we were wrong. Donald Trump's rhetoric in this last push toward Election Day is more overt and extreme than ever before, both in how he's defining enemies and what he is promising to do in pursuit of revenge and retribution. Don't doubt him because it sounds unhinged. Believe him because he means it. Joining me now is someone who's felt the wrath of Donald Trump's revenge plays, his former personal attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen. Michael's the host of The Michael Cohen Show on YouTube. Michael, nice to see you, my friend. Thank you for being back with us. You know, you and I have talked about this a lot, especially that time when he talked about retribution, because that is something you've written about, you've thought about, and you've warned people about, that it's not just guys like you who are close to him, it's anybody who he doesn't like.
Right. You know, Ali, take a look at the book that's behind me, Revenge, a term that Donald Trump is using now. How Donald Trump weaponized the Department of Justice against his critic. I mean, in all fairness, Ali, nothing says elect me president like using the DOJ to silence, your critic or potentially all of your critics. I will say, after listening to you and showing that list of all of the people that Donald intends to go after, I do have to say I'm thankful that my name is not on it, though I do believe he must be somewhat angry at me.
Yeah, and I guess this is the thing we have to think about. How would Donald Trump leverage the power of government, compared to how he did it last time? Because he actually had people in place in some cases who were prepared to not go along with his schemes. But a new Trump presidency, he won't do that. He won't have people in there who are not loyalists. So at this point, you've got all of government. How does that work? What's he going to do? What are the kind of things that critics of Donald Trump are going to feel?
Well, again, why are we even making that that supposition when the reality is he has done it before, and with the new Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity, you can expect him to do everything that he says he intends to do. What did he do, for example, to me? They lured me down to 500 Pearl Street, where they had these were low-level folks over at the Department of Corrections, the Bureau of Prisons, this guy Adam Pakula, Enid Phoebus. They lured me down there. for the sole purpose of having me sign a document that truly that doesn't exist. It was created specifically for me. And why I say that is because it limited my First Amendment constitutional right. It prohibited me from publishing my first book, Disloyal, and or speaking to the media about it. Not only did it limit me, it limited my family and my friends from speaking as well. And so when I refused to sign that fraudulent counterfeit document, they handcuffed, shackled me, threw me into a freezer, and then returned me to solitary confinement, totaling now 51 days of solitary confinement. So when Donald Trump tells you what he wants to do, what he intends to do, understand he has already done it before, and you should listen to what he's saying because he intends to do it again.
Let's talk about this enemy from within. It's a new line that he's dropped pretty much every single day this week. On Wednesday, Fox News aired this Trump town hall. I aired a little bit of it, but listen to it with me for its specificity, and I want to talk to you about it on the other side.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. But the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff. Adam Shifty Schiff, who's a total sleazebag, is going to become a senator. But I call him the enemy from within.
This is dictator level stuff, right? He just put out the name of Adam Schiff, a guy who's running for the United States Senate. He's a United States congressman, calling him a lunatic, calling him the enemy from within. This is not normal politics, Michael. This is really dangerous stuff.
You know, he didn't coin that phrase. In fact, that phrase was coined by Joseph McCarthy, and we all know how that turned out. But there's also a term which is very similar, demoralized from within, is lines that were used in Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler's memoir. These are not new ideologies or belief. Trump is just using them because for whatever reason, he thinks that this is a good political move to continue to shore up his base. Listen, whether you like Adam Schiff or not, whether you like Nancy Pelosi or not, whether you like the Bidens or you like Kamala Harris, whether you like the Clintons, all irrelevant, right? I mean, the purpose of politicians is to debate, not to incarcerate. And that's what Trump intends to do. He intends to go after all of his political critics, all of his political enemies. And he is warning the American people why there's a large group, and it is a large group of Americans that refuse to listen to what he's saying. Instead, they're sane-washing his words for, again, whatever reason. They're sane-washing them so that they're not as unhinged as they actually are.
And that's why we call the segment Believe Him the First Time.
But we begin tonight with just 18 days left before the election. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are spending the day in the important battleground state of Michigan. It is Harris's second day in the Rust Belt. She chose to speak to voters in Wisconsin yesterday rather than appear last night in person at the annual Al Smith Dinner, hosted by the Archdiocese of New York, an event that is typically attended by both presidential candidates during an election year. It usually includes the candidates lightheartedly roasting each other. The vice president did send a video that included comedian Molly Shannon reprising her Saturday Night Live character, Mary Catherine Gallagher.
Is there anything that you think that maybe I shouldn't bring up tonight?
Well, don't lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness to thy neighbor.
Indeed, especially thy neighbor's election results.
Just so you know, there will be a fact checker there tonight.
Oh, that's great. Who?
Jesus. And maybe don't say anything negative about Catholics.
I would never do that, no matter where I was. That would be like criticizing Detroit in Detroit.
Trump did appear in person, but, maybe he should have sat this one out. While perhaps entertaining some of his supporters, many of his jokes either bombed or were just plain tasteless.
But apparently Joe didn't think it was fair for me to have the podium to myself with Kamala skipping the event. So he called, looked at me, and said, "Don't." Does anybody understand that? Yes. I thought it was actually very good until just now. I'm surprised that Bill de Blasio was actually able to make it tonight, to be honest. He was a terrible mayor. I don't give a shit if this is comedy or not. Right now, we have someone in the White House who can barely talk, barely put together two coherent sentences, who seems to have mental faculties of a child, it's said. There's a person that has nothing going, no intelligence whatsoever, but enough about Kamala Harris.
And by the way, Donald, if you're going to try to make a joke about someone who can barely talk and put two sentences together, maybe you should be able to say the words yourself or risk becoming the butt of the joke, something I know that you're used to. Also, imagine being in a room full of Catholic clergy and feeling free to drop a cuss bomb. I'm sure he'll ask for forgiveness the next time he attends church. Oh, yeah, that's right. He never goes to church, nor, according to him, ever asks God for forgiveness. It was actually a bit of a surprise to see Trump appear at the Smith dinner last night, considering his campaign has been pulling him out of events and interviews left and right, including with 60 Minutes, CNBC, NBC News, and even a rally with the very Trump-friendly NRA. Politico reported today that Trump was also in talks to sit down with the social media outfit The Shade Room, presumably to court black voters. But like the others, that fell through. Politico writes, a Trump advisor told the Shade Room producers that Trump was exhausted and refusing some interviews, but that could change at any time, according to two people familiar with the conversations. VP Harris responded to that report from the campaign trail.
I've been hearing reports that his team at least is saying he's suffering from exhaustion. And that's apparently the excuse for why he's not doing interviews. And, of course, he's not doing the CNN town hall. He refuses to do another debate. And, you know, look, being president of the United States is probably one of the hardest jobs in the world. And so we really do need to ask if he's exhausted being on the campaign trail. Is he fit to do the job? And I think that's a question that is an open-ended question that he needs to answer.
Do remember, this comes from the oldest nominee ever to run for president, who is unwilling to release his medical records and who claimed just 3 days ago that he is far healthier than all the other former presidents and Kamala Harris, too. I don't know, maybe he's canceling all these interviews because he's just afraid of having to take real challenging questions from those who are not his MAGA sycophants. That could explain why he went back to his safe space this morning on the comfy couch over at Fox, where he was given free rein to say whatever he wants to the nodding approval of his devout followers, including the one sitting beside him on the sofa.
I am the most stable human being. Remember, they said a stable genius. I am the most stable human being. I've been doing this for a long time. I hate to talk that way, but we can't let this woman get in. It's two people, and she's and you talk about unstable, she's a whack job.
He also let it slip that some people over at Fox helped write some of the so-called jokes he delivered last night at the Smith dinner. And he gave an open endorsement to a key element of Project 2025 on education.
We're going to take the Department of Education, close it. I'm going to close it. We'll have one person, could be you if you decide to retire.
So let's say you have a liberal city, let's Los Angeles, San Diego, and they just decide we're going to get rid of that history. We got new history. This is America built off the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that curriculum comes in.
Then we don't send them money.
Did the brother on the set have any thoughts? Maybe not. People may wonder how we got here. That somebody this incapable could possibly return to the Oval Office. Well, for that, you can look at his performance on Fox this morning, which is a reminder that he is ultimately nothing more than a television performer.
So, folks, Kamala is...
We're entering the final stretch here in what may be, people think it might be, who knows? Honestly, the most amazing thing is nobody knows if it will be the closest presidential race of the century. It is deeply personal, though. Harris unleashing a new line of attack in the final days, questioning Trump's low energy.
I've been hearing reports that his team at least is saying he's suffering from exhaustion. And that's apparently the excuse for why he's not doing interviews. And, of course, he's not doing the CNN town hall. He refuses to do another debate. And, you know, look, being president of the United States is probably one of the hardest jobs in the world. And so we really do need to ask if he's exhausted being on the campaign trail. Is he fit to do the job?
All right, that comment got under the former president's skin. He has responded not once, but twice.
I've gone 48 days now without arrest, and I've got that loser who doesn't have the energy of a rabbit. Tell me when you've seen me take even a little bit of a risk. Not only am I'm not even tired. I'm really exhilarated. You know why? We're killing her in the polls. We'll go through it pretty quick, Dale, and then I'm going over to make a little speech in front of 10,000 people. You think this is an easy life I have, right? I go from here, I say, am I finished? They say, no, sir, you have one more speech. Oh, good. Where is it?
Says he's exhilarated. So meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris tonight addressing a question that continually comes up. That is, what would she have done differently than Joe Biden?
I mean, to be very candid with you, even including Mike Pence, vice presidents are not critical of their presidents. I think that really actually, in terms of the tradition of it and also just going forward, it does not make for a productive and important relationship.
Jane, you heard that back and forth between Harris and Trump on the energy issue. Politico reported that he canceled interviews because of exhaustion. So I just wanted to play a little bit more of his reaction to Harris's comments about that. Here he is.
What event did I cancel? I haven't canceled. She doesn't go to any events. She's a loser. She doesn't go to any events. She didn't even show up for the Catholics last night at the hotel. It was insulting. All they are is sound bites. So today I was at Fox and Friends at 7 in the morning. I then went to 2 different other appearances. I then made about 15 phone calls.
And you know, to be fair, he is doing a lot, right? He did go to the Al Smith dinner in New York last night. We were able to see him for the entire time that others were speaking. He was fully engaged. Harris sent that recorded video that we saw there. He did do that interview this morning, a roundtable this evening, a rally tonight. Is that not enough?
Well, I think given the fact that he fell asleep during an event today and the fact that his Fox and Friends interview featured, how can I put this, some nonsensical statements. Now, granted, the thing with Donald Trump is that, like, this is what he's been like for a long time. But I will say that the energy issue, it's clear that it is annoying him. It is clear that Harris bringing that up has annoyed him as he keeps bringing it up. And it's interesting because there are specific things you can do to annoy him. 1, accuse him of being low energy. And 2, do something on Fox that he doesn't like. And this is now twice that this has taken place. So I do think it's clearly an issue for him, or else he wouldn't keep bringing it up.
Well, it is under his skin, Aaron. Clearly, I mean, he's angered by it, which may be exactly why she's sort of picking at that scab.
I do have to point out that along with his intentions, there is also a question of his competence. Have you seen him lately? I mean, he is out there, he's given 2.5 hour speeches, just word salads. You have no idea what he's talking about. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter. He's talking about this. He's talking about that. He held a town hall meeting where he just, let me explain, because I've done a lot of town hall meetings. The point of a town hall meeting is to take questions. He just decided, you know what, I'm going to stop taking questions. And then he's swaying to Ave Maria and YMCA for about half an hour. Folks are standing there not sure what's happening. Can you imagine if I did that? Can you imagine if Ruben did that right in the middle? Now, our playlist would probably be better. But he called himself the father of IVF. I do not know what that means. You do not either. He said January 6th was a day of love. Do not boo, vote. It made January 6th sound like it was Woodstock. You would be worried if your grandpa was acting like this. No, I'm not joking. You would, right? You'd call up your cousins and you say, "Have you noticed?"
Normal, I pretend to be a conductor because we got a race to win, and we have to win it.
President Clinton could be up there saying, "Hey, are my guys listening to me? Let's roll my favorite song, Don't Stop by Fleetwood Mac. Everyone will love it and enjoy it." Age alone, he said he's only 2 months younger than Donald Trump. That's not a rationale for the behavior that we are seeing. And to Charlie's point, yes, he may be exhausted. Some of this may have to do with age, but the message undergirding all of it is still as dangerous.
The message is still as dangerous and more because he has gotten more unhinged in terms of what he's advocating, what he's proposing this time than even when we first saw him run in 16. What he is saying, what Project 2025 is documenting, which is really the policies of Donald Trump, is far more dangerous. And I think that what people should ask themselves is just 4 or 5 months ago, when none of that kind of behavior was publicly demonstrated by Joe Biden, many people said he needs to get out the race. You need to ask yourself honestly, why are you not saying that about Donald Trump, who has behaved in a way that Joe Biden never behaved and is an embarrassment to his party and his family? It seems that there's such understanding for Donald Trump that we didn't give to a far more able and far more competent Joe Biden in the same 3 or 4 month period. So what is really motivating you to support Trump? Is it his misogyny? Is it his racism? I mean, what's the real reason? Because it couldn't be age and coherence when you have a man standing up on the stage, paying everybody from Pavarotti to rock and rollers, and he can't even dance. He just kind of weaves along. And that's your idea of a president?
He can't even dance is perhaps the sickest burn you have ever offered on this program, Reverend Sharpton. Vaughn, you said something that I want to make sure we go back to, which is this idea that Republicans do have a message. They simply have someone top of the ticket who is not interested in staying disciplined and consistent on that message. I thought this reporting was interesting. Quote, Anna Kelly, a spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee, which is supporting the Trump campaign, said Mr. Trump's message is clear and consistent. President Trump's agenda for America's working men and women will fix our broken economy to lower costs and secure the border to make our community safe. I read that, Vaughn, and I say, okay, that is what they have tested in focus groups. That's what they have tested in polling. If we stay really focused on this messaging on border and the economy, there's a way for Republicans to win. Unfortunately for them, Donald Trump does not have that message consistency. And I wonder not only what it means for him, but Republicans down ticket who might be in, down ballot, who might be in competitive races, who wish he was just sticking to that message.
Right. I don't want to sidestep your question, Alicia, but I want to go to what you and Charlie were just talking about here. I think that this election in the next 2 weeks are going to say a lot about the way that America views Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. To your point, right, Donald Trump, ahead of the 2016 election, there was a little bit more of a focused message. And yet you have seen Donald Trump, in his opinion, thrive being off wholly who he is. Unscripted, no teleprompter, off message, doing the weave. We saw this in the Republican primary, right? We saw him do very little campaigning. You know, the month before the Iowa caucus, he only was in Iowa 5 days compared to his competitors who spent nearly every single day in the state. And that came from hubris, a confidence in who he was as a politician. And right now, what you are looking at is somebody who sees himself ahead in a great many battleground states in polling, somebody who is confident, somebody who has not had to sit down for 60 minutes. He doesn't believe that he has suffered politically the consequences. He hasn't suffered in his mind political consequences for January 6th, outside of some criminal indictments. But for Donald Trump, he feels stronger than he ever has politically at this moment in time. And so for him, there is no need to stay on message scripted from his political advisors. Donald Trump is, in his mind, his best strategist, his best campaign manager, his most effective communicator. And who we are seeing up on the stage is the guy who believes that he can win the
Joining us now are two nationally recognized election experts, Bob Bauer, former White House counsel to President Obama, and Ben Ginsberg, former counsel to the RNC, to George W. Bush and Mitt Romney. They've been traveling the country as co-chairs of their new group, Pillars of the Community. This is an effort to try and ensure election officials they have the support they need to do their jobs. And thanks so much for both of you being with us. Ben, first to you, there are a lot of challenges on the Republican side, and there have been a lot of threats. Election officials afraid to do their jobs after what happened 4 years ago and what's already happening. So what do you think that you two can accomplish? How well protected are these local officials?
Well, we hope to be able to give them the support of community leaders. I think what Bob and I have found traveling around the country is that on a local level, people care about their communities. They want peace and prosperity in their communities. And having elections that are generally accepted is part of that. So we have been getting community leaders in the most contentious election jurisdictions to kick the tires of the election system with the local election officials. And we'd like those community leaders to be able to voice their support for the job that the election officials have been doing.
Bob, what are election officials telling you? Are they afraid?
They're, of course, very concerned about an atmosphere of threat and intimidation that has unfortunately developed over the last several years. And those who've been in this work for a long time have never experienced anything like it. At the same time, they're proceeding. These are professionals. Ben and I came together in this work in the first instance when we were co-chairs of President Obama's Commission on Election Administration. We traveled around the country and we met with election officials everywhere. And the report that we produced for the president reflected the view that is true of election officials, that they are professionals and they're going to carry on with their work, but they desperately need the support of state and local community leadership that are trusted voices in their neighborhoods, where they live, and can communicate to their public that these elections are being professionally, carefully, meticulously, and impartially prepared for.
And Ben, as a Republican, you've done this for a long time, and you were a fierce partisan in 2000 when you needed to be from the perspective of George W. Bush, of course, in Bush v. Gore. But what do you see the impact of Donald Trump claiming without any evidence that might be fraud in this election? Because it seems as though he's trying to sow doubts about not just speaking about the last one, but the one to come.
Yeah, I think it is unfortunate and short-sighted. I think that trust in the election system is really important for all the fundamental basics of our country: peaceful transfer of power, losers accepting the results. And if you don't have that public faith in the reliability of elections, that's going to impact negatively whoever wins this election, whether it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, because this sort of real fighting over the election system is going to have two sides to it. And by questioning the results, the mechanism for delivering who wins our elections, that corrodes public faith on both sides of the aisle. So it is a genuinely harmful to the institution of American government and elections to have these evidence-free charges being bandied about.
And the latest example of the way they're trying to create challenges in advance, Bob, is this whole question in the key battleground states, of course, of questioning military ballots and ballots from people who live overseas. They've been done from forever, that people overseas who are American citizens can vote. So do you think that there are going to be problems, getting those counted with perhaps state courts?
No, I don't anticipate that these votes will not be counted, but you're quite right. It does appear, and I say this based on what they've said publicly, those behind the lawsuits have said publicly, it does appear that they are picking at various issues that they can raise that, should Trump lose, they'll bring into the public a debate as the reason why he was, quote unquote, cheated. And they're looking in every direction that you can imagine. Some of them, by the way, brought directly by the Republican National Committee, Republican Party organizations, and others by other organizations that are plainly sympathetic to them. But the goal there is to suddenly open up a question about military and overseas voting that has, for a very long time, not been treated as a source of particular controversy, and they're trying to turn it into one. And the same thing is true also about these allegations about non-citizen voting around the country.
And Ben, let's talk about the safety of these local officials. We all saw what happened to the mother and daughter in Georgia, and how it changed their lives, as the amplification by the president of the United States calling them fraudsters led to them being attacked at home, vilified. They couldn't go out.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy when something like that happens. These are people who are volunteering for their community.
Donald Trump has been canceling interviews left and right in the waning days of his campaign, but still found time to appear on a conservative podcast that was released earlier today, where he blamed Ukraine's president for his country getting invaded by Russia.
I think Zelensky's one of the greatest salesmen I've ever seen. Every time he comes in, we give him $100 billion. Who else got that kind of money in history? There's never been. Mm. And that doesn't mean I don't want to help him, because I feel very badly for those people. But he should never have let that war start. That war's a loser.
Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist at the New York Times. Her latest column is titled "America's on the Brink of a Great Political Realignment." It's already visible in Arizona. Faz Shakir served as the campaign manager for the 2020 Bernie Sanders campaign. He's now the co-founder and executive director of More Perfect Union, and they join me now. First of all, I'm just going to start with like a sort of somewhat superficial, but to me, legitimate thing. He sounds really weird, Donald Trump. He's got this Brando and Apocalypse Now thing going on with his voice. At all his things, the trains of thought have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. They got more digressive, and he's doing a lot of media, mostly with very friendly outlets like that podcast. But when you look at the answers, it is just nonsense.
Right. It's unintelligible.
It is unintelligible.
If you printed it in the newspaper just kind of verbatim, it would look like it was a random word generator. And I still think that the collective, we are underreacting to that bizarro kind of musical event that he did the other night. I mean, if Joe Biden had done anything remotely similar, if he'd done it for 5 minutes, never mind 40 minutes, swaying on a stage while playing music and saying nothing while everybody sort of pretended it was normal and looked around awkwardly and tried to figure out how to respond, the calls for Joe Biden to get out of the race, the calls for anyone else to get out of the race. I mean, our ability to understand or talk about what's normal is so out of whack. And obviously, Trump being senescent is pretty far down the list of kind of reasons why he shouldn't be president.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Nevertheless, there is something going on here.
Yes, I joked the other day, it's a little like the food is terrible and the portions are too small.
Right, I mean,
it's like,
the best
do you
version
really
of
want
Trump
him at
is
his best?
one who kind of can't accomplish anything.
Faz, it's interesting to me. So there's always a sort of choice with Trump on what you're hitting him on. And it's interesting to me, two things. One, that they have been really going on the democracy stuff. Milley, the threats he's been making, January 6th, hammering that. At the same time, when you're looking at their ad spend,
Donald Trump